Before we dive into the main topic, please take a moment to subscribe, turn on the notification bell, like this podcast, and leave a comment to support the channel. Your engagement truly helps. Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are doing something a little different. We have a text in front of us titled Bigoted Politicians, and I know as soon as you hear that, you might be bracing for a partisan rant.
Or a debate about specific elections.
Exactly. But I want to stop you right there.
Yes, please put the brakes on that thought. That is not what we are doing today.
Not at all. We aren't here to debate policy X or candidate Y. We're here to do what we do best, the linguistic autopsy. We're looking at this source material to unpack the specific high-level vocabulary. We're talking C1, C2 level English that describes the mechanics of extremism.
It's about understanding the words that diagnose the condition rather than just reacting to the symptoms.
That's a perfect way to put it.
And this source, it really does build a kind of psychological profile. It's analyzing the bigoted politician, not just as a person, but as a system of thought, a rigid ideology.
Rigid ideology.
Right. And one that creates a very specific, precarious political climate. And, to understand that climate, you have to understand the words used to construct it.
Okay, so let's open up this profile then. The text starts with some descriptors that seem simple on the surface, but are actually doing a lot of heavy lifting. It calls these figures openly biased and prejudiced.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in casual conversation, we use bias pretty loosely, like, oh, he's biased against that team. But here it feels heavier.
It is heavier. When the text says openly biased, it's describing a clear deviation from the norm of fairness. Biased implies a structural slant, a leaning that prevents a level playing field.
And prejudiced.
Well, if we look at the etymology, it's literally prejudgment. It means the verdict has been decided before the trial even begins.
So it's the complete absence of an open mind.
Precisely. Which connects perfectly to the source's next point about them being narrow-minded. It's not just having strong opinions, it's that the aperture for any new information is just squeezed shut.
Right. But here is where the text makes a shift from just description to action.
Mm-hmm.
It says these leaders tend to impose their beliefs on society.
Yes.
I really want to pause on impose. It's such a strong verb.
Yeah.
How is that different from, say, a politician simply advocating for what they believe in?
That is the key question, isn't it? In a healthy democracy, a leader proposes.
Opposes.
They say, I believe this is the right path, come with me. To impose, though, that's to force a worldview onto others, regardless of their consent. It's a violation.
It's a move from persuasion to coercion.
Exactly. And the text warns us that when a leader makes that shift from advocacy to imposition, the environment becomes precarious.
Precarious. That's a word with a great texture to it. It just sounds unstable.
That's exactly what it is. It comes from the Latin precarious, meaning obtained by begging or depending on the will of another. So if a situation is precarious, it's not secure, it's teetering on a cliff edge. And the source follows that up with a very specific, very visual phrasal verb. Democratic values can topple down.
Not crumble, not fade away, topple down.
Right. Think about physics. Topple implies being top-heavy. If you build a tower that is rigid, like the rigid ideology the text mentions, it can't flex. It can't sway with the wind.
See, when storm comes.
It doesn't bend. It just loses its balance and falls over. It suggests that these political structures, despite looking so aggressive and strong, are actually deeply structurally unsound.
Okay, so we have this image of a teetering structure held together by force. But how do you get people to buy into it? The source dives deep into the psychology, and it uses the word indoctrination.
Yes, and the text makes a really sharp distinction here. It says many of these leaders are indoctrinated into extreme belief systems from an early stage.
And we have to separate indoctrination from education.
We absolutely do. Education teaches you how to think, how to weigh evidence, how to question. Indoctrination just teaches you what to think. It bypasses that critical faculty entirely.
And that creates a closed loop, right?
Mm-hmm.
The text says they get brainwashed by their own echo chambers. Now, echo chamber is a buzzword we hear constantly about social media, yeah.
But in this C2 context, are we talking about more than just Facebook algorithms?
Oh, much more. In this context, an echo chamber is a psychological state as much as it is a digital one. It's an environment where a person only ever encounters information that reflects and reinforces their own bias.
It's like an acoustic feedback loop.
That's it exactly. If you scream into a canyon, you hear your own voice back. If you start to mistake that echo for the voice of the people, you've completely lost touch with reality.
You know, the text uses the passive voice there. Brainwashed by their own echo chambers. It almost implies they become victims of their own design.
That's a fascinating insight. It suggests that eventually they get high on their own supply, they stop hearing reality entirely, which leads directly to them becoming dogmatic.
Dogmatic, that's one of those words that feels religious.
It is, originally. Dogma refers to established religious doctrine. But in a political profile, calling someone dogmatic means they are inclined to lay down principles as incontrovertibly true.
So there's no room for debate.
None. It's not, I think I'm right. It is, I possess the absolute truth and you are simply in error.
This actually bridges perfectly to something I really wanted to unpack with you. This text is absolutely riddled with religious vocabulary.
It really is.
We've got piety, holier than thou, self-righteous, guardianship.
Yeah.
It seems like the source is suggesting these politicians are co-opting the language of faith.
That is precisely the argument. The text is highlighting how political power dresses itself up in the robes of morality. Let's look at that phrase, self-righteous indignation. This is a C2 phrase worth its weight in gold.
Okay, let's break that down. Indignation first.
Indignation is a specific kind of anger. It's not just being mad because you stubbed your toe. It's anger provoked by what you perceive as unfair treatment or injustice. It's a moral anger.
Okay, so that sounds somewhat positive, or at least justifiable.
On its own, yes. But when you add self-righteous to it, it just curdles.
It becomes something else.
Self-righteous indignation is anger that's rooted in the belief that I am morally superior to you. It's not just that you did something wrong, it's that your actions are an insult to my inherent goodness.
So it immediately creates a hierarchy. I'm up here morally and you're down there.
Exactly. And that leads to the holier-than-thou attitude mentioned in the text. It's a colloquialism, sure, but it describes a very dangerous political stance. The attitude of supreme moral superiority.
And the text says this is based on distorted piety.
Distorted piety. Such a powerful phrase. Piety usually refers to being religious, reverent, devout.
Which are seen as virtues.
Right. In a genuine context, piety implies humility and devotion. But distorted piety in politics is when that devotion gets twisted into a weapon. The source notes that these leaders claim to defend pious beliefs and act as guardians of the pieties of our time.
So they position themselves not just as elected officials, but as protectors of the sacred, which effectively shuts down any argument, doesn't it? If we're debating tax rates, we can look at a spreadsheet. But if you're the guardian of piety, and I disagree with you, suddenly I'm not just the opposition, I'm a heretic.
Precisely. It raises the stakes of political disagreement to a metaphysical level. It creates a binary, good versus evil, us versus them. If the leader is the guardian, the opposition must be the enemy of the faith, even if that faith is just a political ideology.
It's a brilliant, if terrifying, way to insulate yourself from criticism. But the source points out a massive crack in this armor.
The hypocrisy.
Yeah. It says, for all this talk of guardianship, they selectively turn a blind eye to injustice.
Turning a blind eye. A classic idiom. It supposedly comes from Admiral Nelson, who put a telescope to his blind eye so he couldn't see a signal to withdraw.
So it's willful ignorance.
It is. It's not that they don't see the injustice. It's that they actively choose to pretend it isn't there because acknowledging it would contradict their narrative.
The moral superiority is a costume. They wear it when it suits them.
And take it off when it doesn't? Exactly. And what happens when someone tries to point that out? That's when the imposing we talked about earlier becomes punishment. The text says they misuse authority to push dissenters into legal limbo.
Legal limbo. I want to stop here because that image is just chilling.
It should be. Limbo, traditionally, is an intermediate state, neither heaven nor hell. In a legal context, legal limbo is a state of uncertainty where you have no status, no rights, and no resolution.
You're just stuck.
You're stuck. You aren't necessarily in prison, but you can't work, you can't travel, you can't defend yourself. The text argues these politicians use loopholes, technicalities in the law to trap their opponents there.
So it's a bureaucratic weapon.
Yeah.
They use the law to defeat the spirit of the law. They don't need to execute you.
Yeah.
They just need to delete your civil existence.
It's a very modern form of tyranny. It's clean, it's quiet, and it's devastating. And speaking of modern, the source then transitions us into what it calls the tech epoch.
The tech epoch. Sounds like something out of a sci-fi novel.
It effectively is the era we're living in. An epoch is a defining period of history. The tech epoch refers to how technology is used to skillfully manipulate public opinion.
It's not just speeches from a balcony anymore.
No, it's shaping the narrative through algorithms and platforms.
And the text has some very specific descriptions for the people consuming that narrative. It calls them rabid fans and ardent supporters.
The adjective choice here is so telling. Ardent means enthusiastic, passionate, burning. That can be positive. You can be an ardent supporter of a charity. But rabid.
Rabid changes the game. It literally refers to the disease, right?
It does. Rabies. A disease causing madness, foaming at the mouth, aggression. Metaphorically, describing supporters as rabid implies their support is furious, unthinking, and maybe even contagious.
A loss of rationality.
Yes. The text says these followers accept messages without question.
And if you do question them, if you offer criticism, the source outlines exactly how that is handled. It mentions that valid criticism is dismissed as hostility. And it gets specific. Caustic remarks, scathing commentary, and biting satire.
These are great descriptors. Caustic literally means capable of burning or corroding organic tissue.
Wow.
So in speech, it means sarcastic in a bitter, corrosive way. And scathing comes from an old word meaning to scorch or burn. Scathing commentary is criticism that leaves a mark.
And biting satire?
Satire that has teeth. It cuts. Now here's the thing. In a free society, biting satire and scathing commentary are essential. They're how we check power.
We mock the powerful to remind them they're human.
Exactly. But the text argues these bigoted politicians frame these forms of expression as threats designed to provoke hostility.
That is such a subtle but powerful shift. If I make a joke about a leader biting satire, and they frame it as a threat, suddenly the police could be at my door.
Exactly. They take the tools of accountability and rebrand them as acts of war. It justifies the crackdown, and this leads to what the source identifies as the growing fear that extremism is becoming normalized.
Normalized. That is the scariest word in the whole text for me. It implies that the shock just wears off. We stop noticing the legal limbo. It just becomes another Tuesday.
That is the danger. The text calls this the erosion of free speech. Erosion isn't a sudden break. It's a slow wearing away, like water on a rock, and you don't notice it until the cliff falls into the sea.
And alongside that, we lose free rein in public debate.
Free rein, that's from horse riding, R-E-I-N. To have free rein means the horse can go where it wants.
The writer isn't pulling it back.
When society loses free rein, the debate becomes constricted. You can only go where the leader steers you. The source also notes that these leaders are antagonistic towards compromise.
They hate meeting in the middle.
They see it as weakness. And to avoid dealing with real, complex issues, which almost always require compromise, the text says they have a propensity for exaggeration.
Here we go. They're frequently making a mountain out of a molehill.
Classic idiom alert.
It is.
But think about the strategy behind it. It means treating a minor issue, a molehill, as if it were a major crisis, a mountain. The text contrasts this with how real issues are treated.
Which are mislaid or deliberately ignored.
It's a magic trick. Look at this hand over here. Look at this tiny cultural grievance we're blowing up so you don't notice my other hand, which is failing to fix the economy.
You focus the public's rabid anger on the molehill so they don't see the mountain of actual failure.
That's the playbook. It paints a picture of a total distortion field. The piety is distorted. The importance of issues is distorted. Even the law is distorted into limbo.
But surely this can't last forever. The source concludes with a pretty stark warning about where this all leads.
It does, and it's not a happy ending for the regime. The text argues that when authority is abused like this, trust begins to diminish and institutions lose reverence.
Reverence. We are back to that religious language again.
We are. Reverence is deep, profound respect. Courts, parliaments, the press, they only function if the public holds them in reverence. If that's gone, the glue holding society together just dissolves.
And the text says legitimacy is eventually revoked by public resistance.
Revoked, like a license.
Yes.
Legitimacy isn't a permanent gift. It's a license granted by the people, and it can be taken back. But that process, it's often painful. The source ends with a chilling line. History shows that when bigotry dominates politics, collapse is not a question of if, but when.
Not if, but when. That implies inevitability. It's a ticking clock.
It suggests that this style of leadership, built on narrow-mindedness and imposed beliefs, is inherently self-destructive. It can't sustain itself because it's disconnected from reality. You can only fight gravity for so long before the whole structure topples down.
It's a heavy realization. We started this deep dive looking at vocabulary words like dogmatic, precarious, scathing. But when you string them all together, you realize these aren't just big words for an exam, they're warning lights.
That's the power of C2 level language. It gives you precision. When you can name the tactic, when you can say, that isn't piety, that is distorted piety, or that isn't a threat, that's biting satire, you strip the manipulation of its power.
You stop being part of the echo chamber.
Exactly. You put on the glasses that let you see the matrix.
A very apt analogy for the tech epoch. So as we wrap up, I'm left thinking about that idea of legitimacy being revoked.
It is the final safeguard of any society.
It is. And here's the thought I want to leave you with, listeners. The text says that legitimacy is eventually revoked by public resistance. But that implies a breaking point. So the question is, in a society facing this kind of erosion and legal limbo, at what specific point does the population decide it has finally had enough? What is the straw that breaks the camel's back?
That is the question that defines the future of any democracy.
A huge thank you to our expert for guiding us through this dense and fascinating text. And thank you all for listening. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe, turn on the notification bell, like, and leave a comment to support the channel.